I think just to say as well, Marion Jones, who was with the Bureau of Investigative Journalists, was also very close to Bruno and Dom. And at the time when Shireen Abu Akleh was targeted and killed in Jenin, Mariam was going to come and join with us in our vigils for Shireen Abu Akleh, but he was absolutely torn apart by what happened to Bruno and Dom, because Bruno and Dom were very much there on his for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and it has really affected Mariam quite badly. So when we look at the impacts, not just on journalists being killed, but on their teams, on the people that work with us, on the commitment that people make, we have to really think about that. And we can all show solidarity, we can all come together, but we have to think about the long-term effects of doing this sort of work. It does make us very ill. So another colleague, a Gazan journalist, was going to come and speak with us today, but she's unable to because she just heard news that her entire family of first cousins were just killed 2 days ago in Gaza. So again, this work takes its toll. We can think that we're hard, but we're not hard and we're not invincible. And the International Federation of Journalists is looking at developing a legal measure that is to prosecute impunity for crimes against journalists. But I think where I'd like to start the discussion, and I think it begins with Toyab and it begins with Ali, where I'd like to start the discussion in the room is what on earth can another law do? What can we expect a law to do? How can we make a law that would protect journalists even more when we see the wholesale failure of international law currently? Yeah.
It's a good question. I've been a lawyer for like 25 years now, and as each year passes, I have less faith in the law. It's almost meaningless, actually, to be really frank about it. I know off by heart, statute after statute. I know how it can be applied. I know how perfect it would be if it was applied properly. And I don't think our problem is in the current legislative framework, actually. I think our problem is in the political will and the political masters that have hijacked it, abused it, and ignore it as necessary. And what I've learned recently, really, and I mean recently, because I was also blinded by my own engagement in the legal process, is that law all the people in this room, myself, the legal establishment, journalists, have allowed political masters to use law for their own political ends. And that's a disgrace for us to allow them to do it. And what governments try to do across the world is to pull power from the people to themselves. And that law is designed to regulate us as civilians and citizens, but also our governments and our relationship with them in order to protect our rights. And I think we've allowed, through comfort and misdirection, governments to take that power away from the people. And this is the big problem we have. So if you can kill and genocide people in Gaza over the last 2 years, and the media outlets in Britain are scared to use the word genocide, academic institutions are scared to use the word genocide until just very recently. And if you even use it now, you're still attacked for using that word. Then that kind of tells you how we've allowed the law to be manipulated by the powerful. And I don't think making a new law is International Federation of Journalists. I understand the rationale behind it, but I think our campaigning is to pull down the power structure and pull the power back from our governments into the people and make sure that they enforce the law equally for all people, regardless of who they are, where they come from.
I don't think they're scared of the word genocide in all cases.
No, I think you're probably right.
I think this is I think the way we're approaching this is great because the journalists and their have been talking for years about the impunity of people who attack us. It's very well known and the cases are well known. This is a great case to talk about because this is actually, I'm talking about Dom Phillips and Bruno Pereira, a success. That we've actually, in a world where very, very, very few cases are identified, let alone proceeded against, the people have succeeded in getting the perpetrators of their murder brought to justice. And whether the justice will work, that's the next stage. So we can approach this from the point of view of not just saying, not desperation, there's nothing we can do, to a case where we have done things. So I want to put a question to Grace and Ali, which is, how did the campaign run? I mean, what can we do in other cases? Who was involved? What sort of organisation? Pressure on the prosecuting authorities and politicians did they make? I think it'd be a good example for others.
Well, I think they only found those responsible because Don was a British journalist. If he had been a Brazilian journalist, they would not have investigated like they have. And they have had pressure from, different, and he wrote for the big newspapers. He was writing books, and there was a campaign, there was an international campaign. Here, some environmental organizations, Survive International, Greenpeace, also launched campaigns. So, civil society pressuring for answers, but also lots of big media organizations and all the institutions that work on protection for journalists. And it happened because, because of this international visibility and repercussion and pressure, because all the time I worked in Brazil, I worked with international broadcasters, and I felt safer working for international broadcasters because they are treated differently. Because people don't have the Brazilian government is very worried about negative repercussions abroad. So usually it's easier for people with international journalists to do their work, to carry out their work, to have access to it's not that everyone can talk to international journalists, but they would kind of leave them alone. So, yeah, I think that's more or less it. But it's pressure, isn't it? Pressure. There are lots of demonstrations as well.
Yeah, I agree. As I was saying before, the journalists who are most under threat are the local journalists, the ones who work for smaller outlets, not the big media organisations that we've heard from. But I do agree that the lesson from the campaign for Dom Phillips and Bruno was to have this international pressure. So, when Reporters Without Frontiers or Amnesty have a campaign around a journalist in another country, even if you haven't heard of them, even if they don't work for a big media organisation, if you support that campaign, that will have an impact in that country, international pressure, putting the spotlight on. If the NUJ in this country puts a spotlight on the disappearance of a journalist in Palestine or Mexico, it amplifies the concern. So
it's this person, then this person. Okay, just to give an order of questions. Yes, please.
So my name is Ashraf. Just connecting to what you just said, we allow, strong word, the journalists and the media houses, which actually are like corporate business houses these days, coming back from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the subcontinent. The environment these days is such like, we have rules and laws and protocols and, things in place, but how is it executed? There's no proper execution. Rather, the one who's doing the story or who's hunting the matter of the fact is executed rather than the rules and obligations and the laws on a particular topic in each country, maybe environment, the Gen Z, things just happened in Nepal, happened in Bangladesh. So it's in Asia, it's going on right now. And that's the reason, journalists actually are they need impunity, are not protected. Easy targets, easily. If you see the numbers, you don't have numbers in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, how many are executed. It's all behind the curtain. But as she said, the British journalist, that's the reason we know, was executed and searched about it, and you hunt about the information, and people are caught for doing that. But there are many journalists who actually are doing the work, are prosecuted, killed, like Palestine, like Syria, like all the. I think it's in a global format, a global phenomena that journalism and journalists actually need protection.
Do you have a question?
So I think my question is, how would we force the governments or the people in power to execute the law and framework in place for the protection of journalists?
Do you want me to say that?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I moved towards representing journalists in my career was because I thought, and I still think, that journalists are a crucial part of any state constitutional process, particularly democratic process, because what they're meant to do and what they do is highlight abuses of power, highlight violations of law, international and domestic. And I think that is the first step in correcting this error that we have. Because what I don't see across, I did lots of work on Srinath Wakla's case with the International Federation of Journalists at the ICC, for example. What I don't see is, or what I did see in that case actually, was news organizations actually investigating her murder and publicizing it and talking about it and contradicting the US and Israeli narrative on that. And that caused, first, the Israelis to actually accept that it was an Israeli soldier that they knew that had shot her, but then no action. And then the journalism kind of fell to the wayside a little bit, and that accountability through journalism stopped quite a lot. And so when people like the International Federation of Journalists lodged their complaint in the ICC, which took months to put together, there was very little reporting about it. And I think it has to be that consistency across the board where media organizations don't worry so much about access. I'm going to upset this government, I'm going to accept that politician. By reporting about what they're doing and the impunity that they're putting in place for violations, and just report it and continue to report it. And that in itself becomes a mechanism of accountability, doesn't it? If you're reporting it and people become aware of the people that are protecting violators of international law. So I think that's my only answer. At the moment, it has to come from that place of highlighting the impunity and asking perpetually and continually for accountability.
Thank you.
So, Mike, your question.
In the case of the killing of Tom and Bruno, do we think that any of the three people on trial is the person who ordered it? And for context, I'd just like to remember member of this union, Larry McKee, who was killed in Derry, London Derry. There are three people on trial for murder, but it all seems for connection to the actual ordering or the firing on the place where she was, seems very opaque. And the trial itself is a juryless, opaque trial. And also remember Martin, who was Hagen, who was killed in Lurgan, and there'll be no proceedings. But do we think that we got the person who ordered it, not just the stooge?
Yeah, so we got the two guys who actually shot them, and then they arrested the man who they believe was the mastermind of the murder. But he was part of a larger, criminal organization. So further investigation needs, there's probably other people above him who are also part of this. But they are the three main at the moment, and they're all awaiting trial. The mastermind, the guy who ordered it, he's got very good lawyers, and that's why they're managing to kind of launch lots of different appeals. And that's why the case is still has not been completely concluded. But there's more help is in handling this.
Thank you. This lady here.
Hi, my name is Nasreen Wilkinson. I'm a freelance journalist and an investigative journalist as well. And I've had horrible trouble. So I'm born here, raised here, educated here, but I worked in one story for the last 7 years, which I'm still trying to put out. And I've been, because it's about military, I had the military follow me, hack my phone, hack my email, warn me off, told me that they were going to kill my children. So that's happened. So I had to go to Panorama and tell them that I was trying to talk to them. And then I've just worked on a story that was on File and 4 on BBC Radio 4, which I got partly out. So it was on. And the corruption related to that, which is ongoing, and I'm trying to get out. Haven't told my husband who's sitting next to me, but been warned off a number of times. So it's happening here. And also the other thing is that, you go, if you work for an organisation, you can work for the BBC, or you can work for a paper, worked for lots of people, different organisations. You don't always feel protected because they'll spy you. They'll listen to you, they might commission the story, you might have part of it, but the really difficult bits of your own protection are completely ignored. So I don't feel very safe here. And even more so, since we've all been protesting now and our rights are, extremely fragile. So I think it's a very difficult question. How do you protect journalists? Do you have, you've got legislation here, but I was on an assignment and I got hit by the police, kicked, punched, threatened. So I think we've got to get it right here. There's a lot of really scared journalists here. We're scared. And if you work for an organisation, if you're freelance, you only work for them for a while you get the story out when you're making it and everything. And then when you've got it out, that's it, it drops. So you're left alone again, you're scared, it's scary. And then you think, the other thing that you just said was the self-censorship. How far do you go to self-censor? What kind of world do I feel like I live in the UK? I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I should be self-censoring at all. I feel really scared, and I only do public interest stories. So, I think that's a question I'd ask. We have to make our journalists here very safe first.
I think,
Well, I was just going to say that we've had several women members of our branch, particularly women members of colour, having a massive increase in threats against them in the climate, and we're actually having a panel precisely on that, the increase in threats to women journalists. And I completely agree that, in fact, we were just saying exactly what you said, that we're talking about threats to journalists in Argentina and El Salvador, but there's increasing threats here as well. And I know that you are representing several journalists who've been prosecuted for trying to cover Palestine and other areas, and who are being prosecuted under terrorism legislation. So it's a increasingly worrying climate here. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's something that I think in the NUJ we need to talk about more, about how to protect freelance journalists in particular, because that issue of
there's more freelancers than staff, and there's more now. You get shorter contracts as well. I had 5 weeks after I worked on a story a year, and then I was just completely dropped. And you don't have the protection the staff have.
Nasreen, I was just thinking that when you're threatened, we have the safety tracker on the NUJ official website, and we're trying to collect as much data as possible on the threats to journalists in the UK, particularly all kinds of threats, but particularly on the far right, because we are seeing just an extraordinary targeting of women journalists of colour, because the right at the moment sees our members of colour as low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So they are being targeted initially. And I don't know if you're aware of the safety tracker and if you've been using it. It's not a solution, but the other thing is to keep coming back to the union, keep coming back to our head office, because if you are being threatened, if you are being targeted, we should be there for you. And if we're not there for you, we're failing as a union. So we need to be there for you. And because you're a freelance, the point of call would be our freelance organisers, Tim Dawson and David Ayrton. So we're there to protect you. And then we can, if there's an ongoing campaign against you, then we can refer you to our lawyers. And Toya also wanted to answer your question as well on this matter.
First of all, I just want to thank you for your work. It's really crucial and important.
Thank you.
I get called weekly, daily, probably daily, by either an academic, a lawyer, doctor, dentist, or a journalist that says, I've done this work, or I've made this comment, and now my life is becoming almost unbearable as a result of it. I mean, almost 100%, almost 100% of the people that we've represented have been able to push back. And successfully, which is kind of tells you that the attacks on them are not proper. It's not that we're brilliant lawyers,
No.
it's the attacks on them are not proper. And so what I would say to you is my advice is, and then by the way, I've been subject to exactly the same thing that you described. It's familiar, right? My 13-year-old daughter came to me with voicemail that had been received on her personal phone with somebody pretending to be a child from Palestine, crying that her family was somebody that was supporting Palestinians and could they help? That was distressful. And she came to me because I told her about well, she's quite smart, actually, smarter than me. She said to me, Dad, I know this is because of your work. And so it's not bothering me, but you should know about it. So it's quite penetrating, the kinds of attacks that happen. Even people trying to sort of dox me at work to try to get my partners to stop me from doing the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the point I'd say to you is this, is that, first of all, organise. Organise with people like you that are in the same position. Have a consistent position narrative on what's happening to you and push back as aggressively as you possibly can. That's my genuine advice, which is exactly what I did for myself. I pushed back.
Yeah, I did. I'm really aggressive.
So we should, yes, we should speak afterwards,
Yeah.
and we should talk about this,
Yeah.
because when I say
police now, the police are prolific.
when I say aggressive, what I mean is aggressive in enforcing your rights and your protections under the law for being a journalist.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in the phone hacking that you're talking about and the threats you're getting, and we can talk about that afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Tiny point of information, the panel that Grace mentioned is on the 28th of this month. Put the date in your diary now. More details on londonfreelance.org.
Do you think you two could do two questions very fast and then we'll rush to answer them in 5 minutes?
It's not so much a question as an information point. There's some inter-union organising happening, campaign which is just being launched called Deeds, Not Words, and it's cross-sectoral, mostly trade unions and people who are kind of also dealing with all this kind of nonsense. It's just launching, so I will share more information. Amazing Livnas Bevan, who's Palestine, Greenwich Palestine Alliance, is involved in it, and a number of other trade union people. So there's quite a lot of things happening because we really need to push back.
Yeah.